Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with ATS Global. My name is Ahmed Osman, and I'll be your host today. Our topic today is very interesting. I know it covers an area that can be challenging for many companies. The title is Choosing the Right Digital Transformation Strategy. I'd also like to mention that this webinar is part of the Manufacturing Strategies Summit series of events. So we host those next on the 11th of October in Houston, Texas for the American edition, and the 7th of November in Milan for the European Summit. So if you are able to join us there physically, then yeah, please do. Now, before I hand over to our speakers today, I just have a couple of housekeeping points. So there will be time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. To ask a question, you can use the box under the slides on your screen. It should be at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Please ask questions throughout the webinar so that they're ready for us at the very end. We don't spend too much time waiting for those to come in. And you can also use that same box to let me know if you're having any issues at all, any technical support that you might need, or if you just have any comments about the webinar that you'd like to make. There's also two polls that are going to be conducted today, so keep an eye out for those, and yeah, get involved if you can. So we've got two wonderful speakers today. First is Mark Priestley, who is Senior MES Consultant at ATS Global, and he's joined by Jan Snoy, I think, who is Senior Consultant at ATS Global. So Mark, whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you for the introductions. Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending. Behind us on the screen now, you'll see some of the topics that we're going to try and cover today. But unfortunately, we're not going to have time to go through all aspects of digital transformation. That will probably take us a few months, if not a few years. So we've picked out the bits that we think are most important, depending on obviously where you are. In this hour, we'll provide you a few insights. We'll look at some pro tips. As already suggested, we'll welcome and encourage your participation. Please use both the chat and the Q&A features and functions as we go. We'll try to engage with you where we can. And during this webinar, there are a couple of polls, and it'll be great for you to share your insights as we get to those as well. But first things first, let's talk a little bit about transformation. So, what is transformation? It's not about playing with new ideas or small incremental change. The meaning of transformation is a complete change in what we do today. Transformation is a change in everything. So, although we'll always talk about digital transformation during this webinar, remember that digital systems and technology are just the tools we use to implement business change. So digital transformation means business change. Just moving on. There's one thing we all need to know, and it's the rule of the game. If you're in manufacturing and you're not agile enough to adapt to market demand, you will quickly see the competition overtake you. The definition of agile is having the ability to move quickly and easily. There are companies out there that know the rule. So just to name a few of these businesses that have recently responded to changing demand because of COVID-19, you've got organizations like Dior, Louis Vuitton. They traditionally make perfumes. They're also now making sanitizers. You've got aerospace and automotive companies who traditionally build vehicles are now producing ventilators. You've got Bloom Energy companies. They traditionally would make fuel cell generators. They're now making ventilators. Burberry make trench coats and clothing. They're now manufacturing masks and gowns for hospitals. Companies are either scaling up production or changing their product portfolio on demand because they're agile enough to do so. How many of your organizations could make that change today? Some businesses thrive when they need to make change. Innovators will grab the market and they will take it into a new direction. Some of your future competitors do not exist today. When these businesses are established, they will not need digital transformation. Digital will be their backbone. This will give them a huge competitive advantage over your business. And some of these companies will have the potential to disrupt an entire industry. Make no mistake, your competitors are investing. If you are not, it's a matter of adapt or expire. Right now, for all of us, it's about embracing the digital change. But there are examples of organizations who didn't realize change was necessary. So on this screen, we've got some companies who, in their time, in their respective industries, were leading, but they failed to change. They failed to modify and modernize. And we won't go through all of these. I'm sure if you're as old as Jan and I, you probably recognize some of the logos that we have here. I'll just touch on a few of them. BlackBerry. At one point, there were 80 million BlackBerry users in the world. Up until the late 2000s, it was the primary mode of business and personal communication. What happened? Well, in short, the iPhone. BlackBerry ignored touchscreen-based technology, and Apple started to dominate the whole mobile market. Going back a few more years, Pan Am. They were the largest international air carrier in the United States. They were the first airline to offer computerized reservation systems. What happened to them? They overinvested in their existing business. They didn't invest in their future. They didn't invest in alternative revenue models. Their prime transatlantic route started bringing in losses. That was due to the Gulf War, which caused their fuel prices to rise. They actually filed for bankruptcy in 1991. Kodak. They were founded in 1888. They were the market leaders in film throughout the 20th century. They produced the Kodak moment tagline, and that was utilized everywhere. Actually, Kodak in 1975 developed their first digital camera, but they dropped it. They dropped it because they were fearful that it would affect their existing film business. The problem is, digital then took over. Kodak filed for bankruptcy in 2012. So there's some other examples on there. I won't go through them all, but I'm sure you all can relate to these organizations. At one point in your life, these were the leading organizations in their fields, and they failed. And yeah, lots of us within the companies that we work for today will probably think that our organization is too big to fail. We're too mature to fail. We're too famous to fail. These guys thought the same. What about the guys who are actually trying to change? Let's talk about them for a second. So some of the companies who are attempting to change, we know from our experiences that organizations are trying to adopt digital in whatever that means, in whatever way necessary that suits them. But some of these companies are getting things seriously wrong. For example, we know that approximately 66% or 2/3 of businesses recognize the company must digitize as soon as possible in order to stay competitive. But the question you have to ask yourself is, how many of these companies actually know how to do it? Companies such as GE, Ford, and other major players poured around $1.3 trillion, I'll say it again, $1.3 trillion into digital transformation initiatives, 70% of which equates to 900 billion, was wasted on failed digital transformation programs. So what happened to these organizations? What happened to their program? They had the money, something went wrong. This brings us to our first poll. So the first poll we're going to ask you is, these businesses are experiencing problems with their digital transformation strategy and program. What are your biggest challenges? And we've got a selection there. So we'll just kick off this poll. And now you should be able to select some of the answers. So we'll attempt at this stage to try and digest the information that you're providing us, and we'll try to respond to some of the indicators that we're seeing. You can select as many of these answers as you want. If the answer or the biggest challenge isn't listed, select other, and then maybe put it into the general chat window and just tell us about the challenge that you have within your organization. So what have we got coming in? Hopefully you guys can see the results coming in. I can see it on the open poll. Let's just take a look. So the top one we've got at the moment is can't predict operational performance, including quality. So, I mean, for me, I'll invite Jan to maybe respond to this one in a second. But for me, this is probably an indication of the maturity of the data collection maybe in the organization. Because if you haven't got a history of quality data that you've collected, then you can't not only analyze what happened previously in the past and what's affected your manufacturing environment. Guess what? You've got absolutely no chance of trying to determine what's going to happen in the future. So for me, predicting operational performance is about having a good, solid data set, let's call it, that you can start to utilize. I think a lot of problems that organizations have is they don't know what data set to collect. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to analyze it. Maybe, Jan, you could just provide some insights into those answers.
Yeah, I think that that the first one is, of course, the top one with 25%. But also new product development is scoring quite high as a biggest challenge, I would say. And of course, the characteristics of best-in-class companies, one of them at least, is that they have quite successful, very much successful, I would say, new product introductions and development, of course. Um, and that means successful means that you also should be in time. Otherwise, your competition is outperforming you. They will be faster to the market. And so it is an issue of getting the basic things well arranged, well sorted, I would say. And one of the elements, and we will come back to that also, you will tell a little bit more about it, is about the application of standards and sticking to that, because these are best practices, and if you leverage those standards and stick to those standards, you have a better starting point for those predictions of your outcome, of your results, performance, quality, in order to deliver that perfect order. Right product, right place, right quality, right time, I think. And of course, the right profit margin, because you should stay in business. Um, Another, manual and inaccurate reporting. That's an interesting one. And I think that's based on the same, uh, that if it's manual, and especially in digital, and I will come back to that later on as well. If you can make that, well, data capturing, make the digital, or make your factory paperless, then at least you get rid of the manual aspect of that. But it's also inaccurate often, due to the fact that you do capture data, but often by manual input, by people writing things down. And if you ask me something to write down, I make typos at least, if not more serious errors. And it's definitely a way forward, and especially in digital, we come back to that later on, to do something about that. But I think it's an interesting one, that the prediction, the predictability of what we do, that is definitely in for improvement. And then, well, the three with the manual inaccurate reporting. B is that, and the E, also digital projects are not meeting internal expectations. So that's obviously a group of people who are already a little bit further ahead, that they do have digital initiatives. And maybe those who've done that can enter something in the chat to tell us uh, if there is something uh, which is causing those, well, the things that you are not meeting your expectations. Is that your expectations are sky high and that's not realistic? I don't think so. People in manufacturing normally are quite pragmatic and straightforward. So so there must be something else, and I would love to see some comments from those who voted that one, that whether they have an idea what the cause of this was for their situation.
Just
And
just as you're talking about the chat window, Jan, maybe you can think about this one for a second, just as it is coming from John. So how do you gain organizational acceptance that digital transformation is needed? So have a think about that one for a second. And Seth agrees with John, that's the biggest hurdle they also have. AD was talking about how to digitalize OEE, so overall equipment effectiveness or effectiveness or effectivity or whatever.
The effectiveness is right.
Yeah, whatever organizations use. I mean, in terms of OEE, it's something that we work with a lot of our customers with to deploy. You can, if you want to, deploy a manual type OEE system. It's easy enough to deliver. When you talk about digitizing OEE, you've got to look at the elements of OEE. So performance, availability, and quality. So you need some kind of mechanism to collect that data. Again, it could be a manual mechanism where someone's typing in the number of products that you're producing. It could be that you're typing in the number of rejects that that you've produced, or if you've got the ability, you can tap into the machines. So quite often what we'll do is we'll look at the control systems that are available. If you've got machinery, for instance, we'll plumb into the PLCs and we'll get a production count. So that helps us towards doing the performance calculation of OEE. The availability is whether the machine or the process or the work cell is available to work or not. So normally we look at fault codes from the machines, or sometimes someone will just tell us they can't perform their work at their station for a reason. And the last piece is quality. Again, if we can get the quality count from the machines, that's great. If not, then someone type it into a tablet that they've rejected 10 items today. That's good enough.
Yeah, on the other hand, Mark, also if you talk about quality, it could be that you have offline testing in a laboratory, for example, and then you probably need to interface between your MES, or for example, your application or your apps, whatever you have, with the LIMS application, supporting the laboratory to get those results in as quickly as possible. I would like to make another general remark as well. I just mentioned something like characteristics of best-in-class companies, manufacturers. Standardize the way you measure your data for metrics is important because OEE is a famous one, a famous metric. It's well defined, but if you see how different companies, or even within a company, different people are, well, working with OEE and getting to all kinds of deviating or different inconsistent results, there is more to it. You have to standardize the way you measure, the way you or the way you capture your data, how you calculate your KPIs, but also how to bring that message to share those values of those, for example, OEE or other metrics with the people who can act on it. So there's more to it. So how to digitalize, I would say, well, that's a great idea to digitalize because it will be more efficient and effective in creating those metrics, but also in sharing that data with the people who can make the difference, the people on the shop floor in general. And that's also, it should be timely. That it's not with hindsight after a couple of hours, a couple of days even. No, right away, because then people know near real time, yes, we are on track, or no, we are not, and I have to do something. That you also know immediately what is the root cause. And I think that there's more to it. I will come back to some of these statements. What was it? The organizational acceptance. That's one of my topics. I will talk about later on. So we'll come back to that. I propose to. We have seen an interesting result of this poll. So maybe you can continue, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of finish off the OE discussion, I completely agree with Jan. The measurement's key. To give you some example, some organizations want the OEE calculation to justify that the machines are working very efficiently. Actually, look at it in a different way. The OEE calculations there is to find opportunities for improvement. It's there to find faults. I also always say, and I say this generally about most quality systems, is it should be considered temporary, because you should be putting it in, learning from the results, and then improving the process. Because at some stage you should remove OEE, let's say, from machine number 1 and focus on machine number 5, because you've solved all the issues from machine number 1, so you don't have to monitor the OEE anymore. An OE is only really important, I'm sure everybody knows, in the critical processes, the bottleneck processes. Everything else doesn't really matter because it can keep up if there's a breakage anyway. So there's a few key considerations there. So just moving on from the poll, we now move into strategy. So what is strategy? Well, strategy is really a long-term plan for achieving something or reaching a goal. But why? Why do we need to do this? In manufacturing today, we need to go through a process of digital adoption for many reasons, and there's just a few listed here on the screen. So first of all, standards. So the standards within manufacturing with the introduction of Industry 4 are rising. So standards are a collection of best practices. They enable us to create reusable building blocks. If we use standards correctly, they can speed up digital adoption. If we use standards correctly, they can reduce the cost and implementation and maintenance of digital systems. The beauty of standards are that they are open to everybody. Everybody can use them. But the problem is many companies don't. And my guess would be some of those companies that we looked at on the previous slides probably didn't align to industry standards. They're here because we've learned from previous mistakes. And I'm sure Jan would agree that the digital transformation in manufacturing businesses is not new. We've been doing this since the 1980s. There are many things that we've learned along that journey, and now's the time that we want to educate and inform people about the journeys that we've been on. The standards in the marketplace that we tend to look at: ISA 88, ISA 95, there's RAMI 4.0, integration standards, integration protocols, OPC UA, MQTT, the list is endless. The key is to find the right standard for your organization, and sometimes the key is to take a standard as a template for use within your organization. Of course, you can modify it to suit your needs. Efficiencies are changing. With digital, we get more data, and that data is immediately available, which, again, if we use the data properly, it can enable the transformation from being a reactive company to a proactive organization. Data can be utilized by smart systems, smart machines, smart devices, and also it can be used for autonomous and agile manufacturing decision making. The data enables a first time right culture. This in turn creates rising efficiency. Data enables you to produce the right product at the right time, at the right cost, but most importantly, at the right margin. When we talk about advantage, as new challenges arise in the industry, new technologies become available to the marketplace. Because you've gone through a process, you're ahead of the game. You're revising your strategies year on year because you know you have to change. You're adopting new technologies and you're transforming digitally. You will surpass other companies who are stuck where you used to be. You will start to gain a serious competitive advantage, not only over your today competitors, but your future competitors. And of course, the last one that really we're all interested in, rising profits. Once you've demonstrated the digital capability and the digital agility that you need, and you've joined the digital revolution, you can continue to transform your company. This isn't a one-stop shop. This is a continuous change program, and it will last many, many years, if not decades. Your value in the market will increase once you've adopted digital, and you'll soon start to see a drastic rise in profits. And with that, I'll hand over to Jan. You're on mute, I think, Jan.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Of course, the next is the what, and that means we have to choose where to focus because we can't do everything at one go. And we have to create, first of all, a smart goal, a specific, measurable, etc. It's not the smart from digital or smart manufacturing. It is specific, that we know what to do and that we know also why we are going to do that. So far too many organizations right now are focusing only at short term. They're more or less in a firefighting mode. dealing with the, well, every moment issues, you could say. And they don't take the time to do a step back and look at what are we doing right now. Uh, why on earth, and then you get all kinds of ideas, are we not doing something smarter that we can avoid all the daily issues and problems, get away from firefighting to a strategic approach, still pragmatic and still very, very down to earth, I would say. But also, it is not something that you, the goal, I mean, that you decide on only on top level. In the end, it is the entire organization which should embrace this and make it into a success. That's in the end the only way forward. And any objective, I would say, that is not meeting that requirement, that it's pragmatic, that's feasible, etc., will fail. And it's not about, if you talk about digital strategy, digital transformation strategy, it's not just about data or connecting everything, machines, materials, you name it. It's also not an IT project. Embracing digital is basically about your business, a business aspiration, you could say, a change program that needs to be adopted also in your company culture, throughout the organization. No one accepted. And so, if we have silos which were quite successful in the past, we have to get rid of them. They should be removed, and we should have a collaborative structure in our organization. And also, budget and projects need to be aligned to deliver that overall business goal. Uh, Business goals, they can be quite aggressive, uh, uh, but also risk aware. And of course, there are risks enough. So I can imagine that you try to be careful and not to overrun things and destroy things. But if you would say, let me maybe not aggressive, more progressive goal, that could be to deliver a lights out and fully digital, adaptable manufacturing domain, which can manufacture virtually everything. Quite advanced. But you also can be more down to earth, I would say, more conservative maybe, but still improving, would be to create a paperless factory. And the request, or the answers from the poll with respect to predictability on one end, but also on well, the reporting and the manual sides of that. This could be an answer to that complaint or that challenge. And the goal should be smart, as said before. And also the goal is something, you put that dot on the horizon. Where do you want to be 3, 5 years from now with your business in the first place? And of course, how to do that? What kind of technologies are supporting that and enabling that? All great. But need to realize that in order to get there step by step, uh, um, you need to check continuously, I would say, whether the dot is still on the right place. Because with the knowledge of today, what we do know today, what challenges we are facing today, uh, uh, we come to a conclusion we want to be there. That is the place for the dot on the horizon. It may change over time. Because if you would have made a plan for this strategy of digitalization 2.5 years ago, you had no clue about COVID-19 because it didn't exist. Right now, we see how much of an impact the pandemic has had to many industries, probably also yours, in whatever way. Maybe you can benefit from it because the demand went up and you did a great business, but quite a few companies had to change, as Mark explained in his examples in the beginning, to change from perfumes to sanitizers, for example. And so that's something you can't foresee. And I don't hope that something big as the pandemic of COVID-19 will happen soon again, but I can't rule it out. It's unpredictable. It will happen in some way. So be prepared that your goal is not a fixed thing. It's just, well, describing or indicating a direction in which you are going to move in order to improve and um, maintain your business and your success. That's the improvement basically, because that's what you're trying to do to stay in business. And we have seen companies who did not change, did not invest in improvement. And even they were great, but they were away within the shortest possible time. If you go to create, you have that goal, you are going to create steps to get there, because it's not a big bang that doesn't work, that will fail. So you need more steps, maybe even many steps. And typically, a step in a roadmap should be 3 to 6 months duration. And you should also be quite certain upfront, to avoid risk, to be honest, uh, that you get a return of investment of each of those steps. And of course, the biggest wins you try to capture first. So basically, your prioritization, what to do first and what next, is based on bottom line added value. That's the best way to construct such a roadmap step by step to your dot on the horizon. If you can't create a return on investment, a good justification for a step in your roadmap, well, that's not the right step. Don't do it. Stay pragmatic, I would say. Then we have another poll about where are you with your current digital strategy. For whatever reason, I can't do anything here.
So some of the poll results are just coming in, Jan. The one that's sitting at the top at the moment with 33%. It doesn't exist yet, but it's being considered. And then close behind that, projects are ongoing and organizations are starting to see the benefits.
Yeah.
I guess, looking at the results, worryingly, 13% saying that it doesn't exist yet. Which in some cases, when we work with organizations, sometimes we'll look at their digital strategies and they'll say something exists, and when we look at it, maybe it can be improved. Maybe it's not working, as Jan said, in the best interest of the bottom line of the organization. In some instances, we see digital strategies being constructed based on almost an independent technology roadmap. Companies want to try some stuff, which is commendable, but as Jan suggested, if it's not providing that bottom line return, then these programs more often than not pretty much fail, because you never get the buy-in from the organization to invest more money to roll the technology out across a wider enterprise.
Yeah, what you see is pretty much that 50% is on A, B, and C. The first one, they're still not. They didn't start yet with executing, I would say, and even you could say D is also not yet started, but it will start soon, and or they just started. So it's a 50-50 actually, which is well, not surprising that way, that I've seen this before in similar situations, and there's the observation of many others as well. So it is in its early stages. That's what you can say, despite the fact that digital is around for quite a while already, and the Industry 4 and smart manufacturing initiatives officially are dated or started 2013. So that's already 7-8 years ago, 8 years at least, I would say. Time flies. And we know from the situation that the manufacturing industry in general is in today, on average, we need to change, we need to improve. Otherwise, we will be out of business soon, because the world has become so much more complex. If you see, that's not just what is happening within the four walls of our factory. It's the end-to-end supply chain, value chain of supply network, and they are quite complex. That is at stake, because in the end, we all together in our supply network have to deliver that perfect order to the customer, a valuable finished good that the customer thinks, "Wow, this is great to buy," and is willing to pay for. And also, and that's also one of the other remarks we have seen in a previous poll, is the product introduction. It's the entire life cycle of products that is at stake. In the past, we talked only about the factory, but that's not enough anymore because it is all connected from a business perspective in the first place, and it should be connected from an operational perspective, and that's where the new digital technologies are coming in to help us to do so. And so that, on one hand, it is encouraging that many people companies are already involved in whatever stage, but also a little bit disappointing maybe that many people still didn't start really, or well, that's only a small portion, but are not there yet to get started really.
Let me
So
ask
I
you a
think,
question, Jan. So for those particular ones, Jan, that haven't started or they're drafting up that strategy, if you were in their position and you were sat at a desk and you've got to pull that strategy to get together, what's the first thing you do?
so was the question for me? Sorry.
Yeah. So if you was in their position and you've got to
Yeah.
draw up your digital strategy and you're at your desk, what's the first thing that you would do?
Well, I start at least thinking about and defining that goal. It's always the starting point and a smart objective. But that's not something I want to do alone, just by myself. And I would gather a team of people who are, of course, open-minded on one end, but also are free to speak. That they don't feel restricted for whatever stupid reason. That they openly can work within the team to study maybe even the smart manufacturing, the digital technologies, what's in there, and what could it mean for our business, for our success, and start experimenting maybe even because it's not just a single product you're going to buy, because it's in the first place it's not a product. And by the way, there are many technologies, digital technologies that can be applied in favor of your success. So you have to pick the right one because not all of them will be suited for you. Um, that it makes it also difficult. There is for certain technologies, if you want to make your factory paperless, okay, that is pretty much standard technology is available. You can buy, and if you think that there is a business case, or if you know there is a business case, and often there is one, I can tell you, that's the pretty safe option, I would say. And but if you want to be more advanced and have more if you want to go to big data analytics, if you want to go in machine learning to a certain extent, and especially artificial intelligence, you know that is still in its early stages, and there is no guarantee it will help you right away. So that are the more risky options, but they may be very worthwhile investigating, because in general you don't know, but for your specific situation it could be very rewarding to start investing in that. And that's what you have to find out. And I will come back at the end as well to this point. And I think that's you need to go forward. Even I would say uh, not starting is not an option, because the chance and also the change, by the way, because of these new technologies of digital, it's inevitable. You can't get away from it. It's there, it will come, and you can't get around it. So you have to. So you better get started, maybe small, that's no problem. But start now to be prepared in order to avoid that all your competitors are, well, passing you and take all the market shares you want to have. And then you have no chance anymore. And it is well, indeed a matter of death or alive, I would say. And we had another statement for that, but that's what it's all about. Yeah. So you have to start now, but still it's not too risky if you start small and with uh, a good team of people, a kind of center of excellence. I often refer to. You have people of different expertise from different perspectives, but especially keep your business in mind. Okay, we'll close the poll. Thank you very much for all your input. Great. The next step. Well, and it's already, Mark's question was already a little bit leading to that. We have seen transformation, we have seen strategy, and now we are up to practical. And basically answering the question, how to? Well, of course, we have seen the goal, we've defined the goal, you know about the improvement for every step in our roadmap, and that's what we talk about, and we have set priorities, what to do first, what to do next. So are we now ready to deliver digital and deliver ROI right away? Not entirely, I would say. We need to do a few other things first, because I already indicated this to a certain extent. It is all about communication. The reason that these big companies, this is huge investments of $1.3 trillion, but they threw away 900 billion of them, was due to the fact that they were not able to communicate effectively their goals, their strategy, their purpose, and the outlook with their employees. It sounds stupid, but that's the case. This has been investigated thoroughly, and it was the most important root cause for that failure. Well, that's something we can do something about. That means that we have to focus at the right things, focus at the why in the first place. If we ask people to do something, we have at least to make sure that they understand what it is, what we're asking, and why we are asking. That this transformation we talk about, this digital transformation, is benefiting the business. It's critical for our future existence, you can say, viability, and how it will impact our people. And it's not that we will automate people away. No, digital and digital transformation is, let's say, half or equal parts technology and people. We do need people, and especially the people you have already in-house as your employees today. It's also, we need to help them to understand how their contribution is vital to success, because it's not an initiative just from management and declaring we are now transformed digitally. No, it's something that is everywhere in our organization. It must be everywhere in order to be successful. So, because we have many different people in many different roles in our organization, we need to be explicit and tell the story and explain our targets, our goals to those people, that they're all on the same page, that they all understand what is in it for them in their role. And one size fits all doesn't work in this case. So you have to be you have to create personalized communications dependent on the role and the group of people you're talking to. And yes, we can have multimedia experience, because we talk about digital, and writing a letter, sending an email. Well, email is also digital, you could say, but the old-fashioned communication is not always good enough. And you have to reiterate as well that you do it more often. That you check also, measure how well the communication is coming across. That we are indeed on the same page, and that everyone in his own role understands what to do and how to work with that. So measuring an iteration, repeat the message and adapt the message to the actual situation is important. In the end, it's about becoming a change-ready organization, because that's what we have to do: change and improve because of that. I think there's a lot to we need to do a lot about around communication, and my observation, not only mine, is that we don't do that well enough. Often C-level management is kicking off the initiative with a lot of festivities, maybe even whatever, and then their role ends apparently. Well, that's not the way to move forward. That's not the way how it works. So we have to do better than that, and that's the way to look at it, I think. So this communication is really key, and it's not an event, a one-time off. It is a process, a continuous process, you can say. From the beginning, well, there is basically never an end because there is always more to be done. It's a continuous improvement program anyway. So also communication is needs to meet that requirement, you could say. Secondly, we have to create that team. I already mentioned that as an answer to Mark's question. We need to know exactly in detail what it's for the goal we want to achieve, how that does work for us. Certain things are pretty clear. You don't have to study that much. You can just buy it. But there are quite a few things that are more advanced, next steps that are not that clear yet. And by the way, these technologies are developing quite fast. So new things are coming to the market. Just as an example, probably you remember when you got your first mobile phone about 20, 25 years ago, if you're old enough anyway. And that was new. And we know, oh, wow, this is great. We can make a phone call everywhere. And it can be called also everywhere. Right now, we have smartphones, which are way beyond. And there are people that don't know that you can make a phone call with a smartphone because they're used for all kinds of other things. So it's going pretty fast. It's about 20 years that we talk about. And the same is true with the internet and all the things that are connected to that. Because in the initial phase was internet was sending an electronic message. Wow, that's great. Not the old-fashioned fax. But if you see how that is has entered our world, our daily lives, in our cars, in our houses, in our everywhere. So it's that's beyond understanding and belief, maybe even. So that's something you have to take into account and be aware that you sometimes have to experiment with new technologies, yeah? And even you have to be willing to try out different ones. There may be there's no guarantee for success, not for everything. So you have to be careful on one hand. On the other hand, you have to be an entrepreneur to see what you can do next. I think that is very important. And I would like to close this presentation at least with three takeaways. Yeah. Digital transformation is not about the technology and all that other stuff. It is about your business improvement. Technologies are the enabling tools here. If you look at how to, well, a structured, standards-based, pragmatic approach. That's the best way forward. That's what we have seen in the past with Industry 3, you may say, with the technologies of 20, 30 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago. But right now, it's exactly the same. A pragmatic, standards-based, and well-structured approach that delivers the best results. Last but not least, I already mentioned that digital, smart, Industry 4 kind of things is this equal parts of technology and people. But in the end, it's people, your people, that makes the difference. Okay, I'd like to show a short video, which you also can find on our website, by the way, which is, I think, in 1 minute 48, a summary of Digital Rising. I hope this will work. And it has to start. There it goes. Okay,
Okay.
thank you so far, and I hope we have some questions.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mark and Jan, for that wonderful presentation. If anyone's got any questions, could you please post them now so we can go through them? I'll start you off with the first one that's come through. It's from Stefan. Stefan says, lots of digital solutions to track and trace goods are already on the markets. Smart sensors, scanners, RFID, etc. In a lot of cases, we experience roadblocks with regards to authority allowance to the tracked goods till end customer. In addition, consumers are confused about new and different technologies, and in a lot of cases, they do not have the right equipment to contribute end to end. Any thoughts on this?
I think it's probably a two-part question, this one. So maybe if I can try and take the first section, and maybe Jan, maybe you can think about the consumers being confused. But I mean, in terms of track and trace of goods to the end customer, when I've just read the question just before it was read out there, my instant kind of response was, well, who's creating the roadblocks? Because if you actually think about it, most of the products that we're using right now are being tracked by someone. Whether you're using a laptop, it's being tracked. Whether you're using your internet, your ISP is being tracked, your iPhone's being tracked. If you're purchasing a new car from a major OEM, guess what? There's SIM cards in that car. It's being tracked. So when we talk about tracking goods from an end customer perspective and those roadblocks, maybe, Stefan, it's something we can talk about offline to really understand where these roadblocks are coming from. Are they coming from a consumer perspective, or they come in internally within your organization, or maybe unions or wherever? So that would be interesting to find it out. But think about kind of the bigger picture, that we're all being tracked with a lot of the electronic products we're purchasing today already. So tracking products isn't a problem. Maybe this is a cultural change that's required within your organization, maybe. So we'd need to dig a little bit deeper into that one. But Jan, I don't know if you had a chance just to think about the consumers being confused about new and different technologies.
Well, I'm a bit confused actually, but no, I'm kidding. But there is of course a lot about privacy, and that's the difficult is one of the things. If you talk about digital, if you talk about big data, and if you track products towards the end consumers, end customer, you know who they are and where they are or what they do with the product, etc. That's of course information that may be considered to be private. And also authorities are quite keen on sticking to the rules we have agreed on. And well, these rules are more strict than in the past, absolutely, for good reasons on one hand. On the other hand, it is also restricting us all from having more benefits. If you can track products to the end consumer, then you can also deliver a better after sales service, I would say. And for the normal common goods, that's maybe not that important. But I have an example where I work with a medical device producer, large products, and of course the big machines that are delivering certain treatments to patients, to people. And it's a great asset, a great benefit if you can track what is happening with the device during its life, delivering those great treatments to people. That you can maintain the equipment better and proactively can update your equipment based on the facts you measure during its normal working life. And of course, patients are not identified, but I know, and Stefan Blattner, you asked for this, and I think your name sounds German, and I know in Germany the laws are a little bit more strict even with this respect than in other European countries. But so consumers, if you have to work with new technologies, I don't know what I'd like to talk to you offline to understand better what you to mean by that. Who are the consumers? Is that also business, or is that private people buying stuff? So that's maybe there's a difference there. If you talk about your partners in your supply chain, other businesses in whatever way, then I can understand. And if they are confused, then it means indeed better communication, education, maybe training. It's all part of that because it's a new technology, and that's true for us in manufacturing, but it's also true in other parts of our supply network.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, just touching on that, Stefan, or indeed anybody else, if you do want to get in touch with Jan and Mark, if you could just get in touch with us and we'll put you in touch with them, that's fine. The next question that's come through is from Patrick, and he says, despite the pragmatic, structured approach based on best practices, you suggest lots of digital projects seem to fail. Why? What is our practical experience and advice?
Well, because of the fact that they didn't stick to that structured approach, we're not pragmatic. And first of all, I mentioned the example of there's an investigation that has been done by Keith Kitania, by the way, in 2018 about that 1.3 trillion. If you look at that kind of examples, you get scared. You think, wow, if it's that risky and that it goes that wrong, I don't want to be in there. Well, maybe we should have included more success stories as well. And there are quite a few actually. And you see, if people are well prepared and follow this structured approach, and that's exactly what we presented or a variant to that doesn't matter. Then we know that, and the most important reason I think is that next to the communication issue, they did look at their initiative as a technical IT or smart technology or digital technology initiative, often led by IT, instead of looking at it as a business transformation, a business improvement program. And I think that's the big because if you do that, then you have to look at your current business, your current way of working, and in order to deliver your products to your customers, you know that you have to include your organization and governance, especially change management is an aspect of that. You need to look at your people skill sets particularly, and of course, you have to look at the digital technologies. But technology as a goal, as a holy grail in itself, and you focus only at digital technologies, you will create a huge gap. Because if you introduce new digital technologies, the best you can think of, but you still maintain that old-fashioned, lousy process to produce your products, I know what will happen. You will make more bad products faster. Well, that's not the idea. So it is about the holistic view, the holistic approach, and that is not being applied. I think that is the majority of if you look at the projects that fail, the majority of those fail because of the lack of that holistic view, holistic way of working.
Just to follow on from that as well, I think even when we've clearly identified the right improvements to make and the right technology to go deliver, a lot of organizations aspire to the latest and greatest. I'll give you a real example here. There was an organization who spent millions of pounds on collaborative robotics, for instance. They got the collaborative robots, they put them on the shop floor, and guess what? They didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the data, they hadn't gone through the prerequisite steps in order to enable them to use the technology. So lots of companies get tripped up with the fundamentals, actually understanding the steps they need to go through in order to take advantage of the new technologies they want to use. And depending on your level of digital maturity, you may have to start pretty basic, but it's a layering process to get to the end goal of, let's say, modern intelligent solutions.
Okay, and we've got one final question just before we reach the end of the webinar, and I think it leads on quite nicely from what you just said, Mark. It's from Marek. Can an implementation of a new ERP software be treated as an entry point for digital transformation?
I would say yes and no. My instant response to that would be, what is it you're trying to achieve with the ERP software?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I certainly believe in, it's certainly from an ERP perspective and on all other technologies, is you want to have boundaries and delineation. You've got to understand what the software is good at and what it's not designed to do. what we tend to find in a lot of our customer base is, they may implement, in this case, a new ERP system to deliver function X, but function X should never live in an ERP system. It might need to live in another environment. But we're kind of now starting to drift back towards standards. So in this case,
Yeah,
we're towards ISA 95 standard, and that will clearly start to help us here. Yeah.
that's absolutely true, Mark. But I think to give a short answer, yes, it can, because a new ERP will require more data, more specific data from your shop floor process or manufacturing operations, and that digital can be a great tool to help you. And so, yes, I would say it can be an entry point to start with digital.
All right, brilliant. And that officially takes us beyond 4 o'clock, which was, I didn't think we'd actually get to that point, but yeah, we're here. It was a very good presentation. Thank you both for that. Thank you everyone for the
Pleasure.
questions. They were really detailed, in-depth questions. As I said earlier, if you want to get in touch with Mark or Jan, just get in touch with us, and we'll put you through. And with that, bye. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.